Thank you. Good morning. Well, it's great to be back at Highways UK, this great festival of roads and everything that goes with them. We're very pleased to be here. I'm very pleased that the user voice is being put centre stage in all this. We all drive, we all rely on driving. Virtually everything we rely on in life comes by truck. It really matters that the roads in this country work, both to the economy and to us as drivers. So I think getting the user voice up front is very, very positive indeed. We're the independent statutory consumer watchdog. We're sponsored by the Department for Transport. We're very much at arm's length. It feels independent, our job. And what we represent rail passengers in Great Britain, bus, coach and tram passengers in England outside of London, and since 2015, the users of the strategic road network. And that includes all users, so that's cyclists, equestrians, and all sorts of people who cross the strategic road network, but also, very importantly, freight. And we've taken a very conscious view. We're going to really try hard to get the views of truck drivers into these debates, which I think are often views which are not heard clearly enough. Our job is to be pro-user. We're not pro-bus, pro-rail, or whatever. Our job is to stick up for the users of all these methods of transport. And we bring evidence to the party. I could bore you with all my road journeys over the last year, which would be fascinating, I'm sure, and I can show you some pictures even of some of them, which alarms my family. But we bring evidence to the table. We bring the voice of the user in a constructive, prioritised way. That's what we try and do. We try and be useful and make a difference. We have no power whatsoever, I'm pleased to say. We're an influencing organisation. We rely on the power of our arguments in persuading Jim and his colleagues and other people that what we're saying is what users really think. And the whole purpose of all this is to make a difference. We're not a think tank. The job is to make a difference. The job is to make the roads better. And we're trying to help Highways England, the Office of Rail and Road, and the Department for Transport really focus on what the users think and want. We've been busy quite properly in the first couple of years of our existence. We've done work around road users' priorities for improvement. We've done lots of work around service areas on motorways and other places. Sorry, Richard. Oh, sorry, I thought Richard was waving. I thought my 10 minutes was up. Well, that was quick. We've done work around smart motorways, the user experience of smart motorways, quite a contentious area. And we've done work particularly around road surface quality, which we're launching today with Highways England. And I think the fact we've done that piece of work with Highways England in a partnership is evidence of the fact that we're working very closely together, trying to make a difference. We're very pleased about that. Road user satisfaction. That's the key thing we're going to try and bring to the table. We published the National Rail Passenger Survey on the railways. We have a bus passenger survey. We're now developing a new strategic roads user satisfaction survey to replace the current NRIS, or National Road User Satisfaction Survey. It's going to be slightly, what we're going to do is slightly bigger, slightly better. But what's important to remember is that road user satisfaction is a key target for Highways England in RIS 1, and it's increasingly be a key target in RIS 2 as well. So what the users think quite properly in terms of an effective feedback loop is going to become more and more important. At the moment, we've got road user satisfaction at 89.1%, which is below the 90% target set by the government. Interesting environment where you've got growing population, you've got growing levels of traffic. Jim's spending lots of money, which is great, but of course that disrupts the network, lowers satisfaction. So there's a real challenge there about balancing rising traffic and investment, which you see across all infrastructure modes. But satisfaction is here to stay as a driver in these debates, which is really good. Of course, safety is the most important thing. We're trying to help Highways England, trying to help others focus on safety, trying to get everybody home in one piece every night. And we've got some ideas which we set out there about how you can do it. I think driver behaviour is always an interesting one, because I think we've moved beyond the era of sort of public education campaigns in terms of driver education. But things like the Red Cross on the motorway gantries really matter. You know, they are key to people's safety. And the way that people interact with signage and with the infrastructure to keep them and others safe, I think is very, very important and needs more analysis. Journey time screams out from the Road User Satisfaction Survey as being the key driver of satisfaction. It's the thing that links overall satisfaction this thing most closely linked to overall satisfaction. We all set a kind of mental timetable, I think, when we set off on a road journey. It should take an hour. I'd like it to take an hour. And it's funny, because when you hear on the radio about the traffic news and they say the usual disruption, that always makes me laugh. Hang on, how can it be the usual disruption? But people adjust their sort of mental timetables as to what it usually takes for that journey, and that's what they want it to take. And I think it's exactly the same as the railways and the buses. People want it to take that amount of time when they're disrupted through roadworks or through accidents or whatever. They want the information, they want the help to be put back on track. And I think journey time is absolutely crucial around that. And I think what Highways England can do around that is around roadworks, about the information and the signage on roadworks to help people, and getting much closer to the police in terms of accident clear-up. I know Jim's done a lot of work with this. It's been very positive, and the signs are very encouraging. But getting accidents cleared more quickly, I think, would be very helpful. And in particular, we've seen a couple of very lengthy delays on the M3, on the M6 a couple of years ago, where there's been incidents which have caused very lengthy tailbacks. And we're trying to work with Highways England on how you can help stop people joining those lengthy tailbacks, getting the traffic turned around more quickly, and also the welfare of people stuck in some of those incidents. You'll remember the one on the M3, people were stuck for 11 hours. That's a tremendous amount of time. And Highways England do have a duty of care, along with the police and the local authorities, towards those people stuck in those tailbacks to try and help them. Winter is coming, it ain't going to get any easier to do this stuff, and nobody's pretending this is easy, but I think we've got to get better at doing this. Surface quality, we're launching this today. Please do come to our stand, which is G05, just around the corner here. All my colleagues there to answer all your tricky questions. We've got tons of our material there. Please go and come and see us. Launching a piece of work on surface quality. It was interesting, when we did our road user priorities for improvement work early on, road surface quality came out for car drivers, van drivers, and truck drivers as the top priority for improvement. And everyone said to us, that can't be right. They must be talking about local roads and potholes and stuff. No. We were definitely talking to people about the strategic road network. They're not saying that the road service is poor on the strategic road network. It isn't. By and large, it's pretty good. But they expect it to be top quality. You've got 70-mile-an-hour operation. You've got busy traffic volumes. They expect it to be top in terms of a continuously smooth surface, no ruts, undulations, which of course affect motorcyclists and caravan pullers unduly, white lines and cat's eyes in good condition, and preferably asphalt, not concrete. We don't like concrete. It's noisy, it rumbles, it's unpleasant, it's distracting, you can't hear the radio. Bring us more asphalt, please. And I think in RIS 2, what we want to see is that the user's view of road surface quality being represented alongside the technical standards. So what people think about road surface quality is very, very important. And we've got a fantastic infographic which you can pick up a copy of at our stand, which you can put on your office wall and point to and say, that's what we're trying to achieve, that's what we're aiming for in terms of top quality road surface. As Jim has said, RIS 1, the Road Investment Strategy 1, has been a bit of a learning curve for all of us. We still feel relatively new on the block. A 5-year spending plan for the roads is absolutely a fantastic thing to have, rather than the ridiculous yearly stop-start that Jim's predecessors had to deal with before. But RIS 1's been quite a learning curve. It's getting it right for the Road Investment Strategy 2 is very, very important. And getting the user's voice in there is going to be really key for us. We've already done work around this. And as Jim says, for the first time, you're seeing that slight start of a link, a much closer link between the payment of the vehicle excise duty and what's being provided by Highways England. That's sort of one step on the long journey towards road pricing, perhaps, but that's a very long journey. But we're slowly moving there. So Jim's right. Get your views in on that consultation. What we've got coming up next is views of cyclists, pedestrians and equestrians who use or cross the strategic road network. We're talking to some of the industry, logistics sector and coach industry managers about what they want. Disabled people, their experience of using the strategic road network. There's a huge number of drivers who are disabled, and I don't think there's been a very distinctive voice emerge from that community about what they need. I suspect what they need is what everybody else needs, but a bit more of it in terms of information and support sometimes. And interestingly, we're going to be doing a bit of work, hopefully, about the road user experience of tunnels. More tunnels are coming on our network, and how do users react to them? How do they like them? What do they dislike about them? We're going to try and get that voice in there as well. and also moving on to try and gauge the quality of services on the A-road network as opposed to the motorway network. You may have seen recently we did a bit of work about motorway service areas where users basically think they're pretty good, and they've improved enormously over the years. We need to get some of that thinking into the A-roads as well. So we're going to be trying to stand up for road users in all this, and thank you very much for the opportunity this morning. Thank you.
Next, please welcome Richard Coates, Head of Performance at Highways at the ORR.
So good morning, everyone. So for those that don't know about the ORR, we're the independent body here to protect the interests of existing and future rail and road users. And our specific highways role is all about monitoring Highways England, understanding how it's performing and reporting publicly on that. Before I move on from this first slide, I thought it was worth pointing out, this is a picture that we took when we recently visited the A14 scheme between Cambridge and Huntingdon earlier this year. I think Jim mentioned it earlier. It's a £1.5 billion scheme. It's going to transform journeys in that part of the country. And it's a scheme which has been on the cards for about 30 years and is only now going ahead because of the changes that government implemented through roads reform a few years ago, and that 5-year package of funding and outputs. So we think it's really important as the monitor to be out on the network, to be understanding how schemes are being delivered on the ground. And actually, I have to say, we were incredibly impressed with the progress being made on that scheme and the commitment of the team that we met there. So today, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about our last annual assessment of Highways England's performance, talk about how it's doing so far in the road period, and then based on that, I'm going to talk about some of the lessons that we can draw out in terms of RIS2 and what's really important about RIS2. So one of the key things that we do each year is we publish our annual assessment of Highways England's performance. We published our latest one in July of this year, and it's available on our website if anybody wants to download it. This year, we found that Highways England, its performance is good across a range of measures, but we also identified some areas for improvement. So in the road period so far, Highways England's performed well in delivering its programme of major schemes. Overall, it's met the majority of its milestones. So, for example, last year, it started 8 schemes against its plans to start 4. And it's done that while keeping traffic flowing. So 98.4% of the network was kept open for traffic, and it's cleared incidents ahead of target. It's also becoming more efficient, £169 million of efficiencies delivered in the first 2 years, but more to do on that. But there are also some areas which need attention. So Highways England has been marginally below its targets for network condition and user satisfaction, as Anthony mentioned. We've investigated both of those areas with the company to understand how it's addressing them. And in both cases, actually, we've worked really well with Highways England, and it has developed plans for the positive actions that it's going to take forwards to try and deliver better outcomes for road users. So what lessons for RIS2? Well, firstly, it's clear that roads reform is starting to deliver benefits. So 169 million of efficiencies mentioned earlier, and real focus being applied to delivering a 5-year package of outcomes. So it's really important that we actually build on that and we continue with the changes brought about by roads reform, and embed them. Secondly, a diverse package of outcomes that Highways England's delivering. So, for example, it's having to manage delivering a large program of investment whilst also keeping the network open for traffic. So in RIS2, we want to see that Highways England's proposed outputs, its outcomes, are based on really strong evidence about what road users and stakeholders want. In our annual assessment, we also reported on improvements that Highways England's been making in terms of how it's planning its major schemes. Jim mentioned the optimization work earlier. So early in the road period, we highlighted what we saw as risks and potential inefficiencies associated with planning to start a large proportion of the major schemes in the final year of the road period in 1920. And over the last 2 years, Highways England has established a portfolio management office and taken forwards work to optimize its plans, which it published in October. And the plans are better. They'll reduce disruption to road users, as Jim said. They'll spread the delivery of schemes planned for the same route or area, and that should help reduce supply constraints and spread the work for the supply chain more sensibly. And it should also help deliver efficiencies. The new plans also mean that where schemes weren't currently demonstrating value for money, they'll be reconsidered. So some more lessons for RIS2. RIS2 needs to be built on plans which are well developed, with improved understanding of the likely options and costs for the major schemes. And it needs to be based on a portfolio of schemes which has been arranged to minimize disruption for road users and to minimize constraints for suppliers. Again, the 5-year RIS is clearly leading to benefits, so it's important that we continue to plan on that longer-term time frame. Because Highways England now has that certainty of funding over the 5 period, it's planning better over the longer term. It's starting to engage with its suppliers better over the future pipeline of work. And the final key message that we put in our annual assessment was about asset management. So Highways England has got more to do to improve its asset management, and the company recognizes this. It knows that it needs to improve its understanding of its assets, and in particular, its planning of the maintenance and renewals work. So the graph on this slide, I'm not sure if you can see it, but essentially what this is showing is that in the last 3 months of the year, Highways England tends to spend far more on renewals than in the earlier months. So those last 3 months are over the winter, and that's not the best time to be renewing assets on the network. And Highways England knows this and is putting in place plans to address this. Its budget for this year is much flatter, so we will report at the end of the year on how it's progressing against that. So again, what can we learn from RIS2? Well, we need RIS2 to be built on much better plans for maintaining and renewing Highways England's existing assets. We strongly support making sure that Highways England has the right plans and is funded to keep its network in a safe and serviceable condition. And that should include funding it so that it can take forward the right work now so that costs are minimized over the long term. And we want to see Highways England continue to improve its asset management capability so that it can become more efficient, and that will do things like remove that annual cycle of higher expenditure at the end of the financial year that we looked at earlier. So thank you all for listening, and very keen to hear your thoughts and questions in the discussion afterwards.
OK, well, let's hear from the people who actually build the roads. Please welcome Alistair Reisner, Chief Executive of the Civil Engineering Contractors Association.
Well, good morning, everyone. So I was asked to provide a presentation to talk about contractors' experience of delivering RIS 1 and also to talk about our expectations for RIS 2. So when I got the brief, I sat down and started beavering away, putting together my presentation. And it was all about the what. What are the great things that our members have delivered? And I got through it and I thought, to be honest, it's really interesting to us, but is that really what we should be talking about? So I scrapped it, and instead this morning I'm going to talk to you a bit about the why we're delivering what we're delivering. And at this point, I'm going to deviate very quickly from what I had planned to say, because as I was coming in here today, I don't know whether any of you saw on the video screen, just as you came in at the entrance, there's a video that's been put together by Highways England that really starts to answer that question, and I would encourage you to have a look at it if you get the chance. It's a really great piece of work, so if they are already in the room, hats off to the comms team at Highways England, who I presume put that together. But returning to my piece, I suppose first and foremost, I should say who I am, why I'm here. So I run the Civil Engineering Contractors Association. We're the representative body for the UK's infrastructure contractors. About 300 members across the country who deliver about 80% of all the infrastructure construction in the UK. When we look in the highway sector, every single major project, both Highways England and Highways Agency before it, has been delivered by our members. And we've also got a strong presence in the maintenance community, and so our smaller members are often operating at Tier 2, Tier 3 in the supply chain, both for Highways England and across the wider highways industry in the UK. So for us, roads is really important, about 25% of our market. So why do I say this? A, because I'm a rampant self-publicist, and I love to take any opportunity to brief a room on how important our members are, but also because I want to get across just how important highways is to the UK infrastructure contractors. It's a crucial part of our industry. So in order to sort of understand where we're coming from in relation to Highways England, I just want to run through just a quick bit of history. So I joined seeker back in 2008. And as part of my introduction to the organization, I started familiarizing myself with some of our key issues, key policies. And whatever we started talking about these things, we always came back to the same point, and it was a point around, if you give us consistency of investment, if you give us that pipeline of workload, we can do wonderful things for you. And we talked about that because we get that in water, we get that in rail, and so we had a really big lobbying point around, couldn't we do that in roads? Wouldn't that be a great idea? And as trade associations, it's always good to have a sort of a pot boiler as a policy that you kind of go, well, we'll never get it, but at least it gives us something to talk about at whatever meeting we go to. So we weren't really paying attention at the spending, well, we were paying attention to the spending review in 2010, but given we were in the middle of a recession, we were more looking at the numbers at the end rather than some of the key policy points in it. And there was a little line in there that said, Highways Agency to undergo a full review to ensure its structure and governance will assure value for money. Didn't mean a great deal to us. But shortly after that, we saw the Cook Review, a fresh start to the Strategic Roads Network, and written in there was the line, we must make a clear break from this pattern of short-term thinking and stop-start investment. So people were singing our tune. It was brilliant. We were looking forward to that. But we'd seen a lot of false dawns. We weren't sure what was actually going to happen in relation to it. So, bring forward to 2013, action for roads. Things started to get real. It said, from 2015 onwards, Highways Agency will have long-term funding certainty on its capital program and resource maintenance, initially to 2021. And this was when we were sort of running around the office with our ties around our heads, cheering, because this is what we've been lobbying for 5, 10 years. But then you get to the problem point of, oh, we've done some quite big talk all the way up here about, well, you do that and we'll do this. And now we've actually got that, we're going to have to do this. Are we ready? So I suppose that brings me to how have things gone in RIS 1. I think it's only fair to say there have been some challenges, both on industry side and with Highways England. It's a really big change program. It's not just saying, let's rebadge Highways Agency and call it Highways England, but keep everything the same. There's a lot that's gone on to get the model pointing in the right direction. Getting it right, I think, has been the story of RIS 1. Now, I could talk about some of the great things that our members have done during RIS 1, but frankly, we're at a conference where many of them are exhibiting out there in the main hall. I would strongly encourage you to go out there and talk to them about some of the brilliant things they're doing to drive efficiency, to drive better safety across the network. Instead, I'm just going to pick a couple of things that I think go back to that thing about the why that we're doing this. So I've just picked up a couple of schemes that Highways England have been working on with our members. First is the A591 reopening. So you'll remember the floods in Cumbria. Really quick action by Highways England, working with industry, working with the local authority in the area to get that route reopened. Why is it important? Because it wasn't about reopening a road, it was about saving people's jobs in the Lake District. That's why we do what we do. We don't do it because we're pouring concrete. We do it because of the impact it has on the society in which we work. Now, the second one, and Jim touched on it very quickly earlier, but I grew up, this is quite personal for me, I grew up in rural Northumberland, and my parents both worked in Gateshead. So my teenage years were riven with the words A1 Western Bypass, because basically it's where my parents had to go through every day in order to come home. So to be blunt, the ability for me to get my tea in the evening was driven by whether the Western Bypass worked or not. Sadly for me, back then, it didn't very often. It was basically the M25 equivalent in the northeast. You could sit on there like a car park and not see much progress. So my parents were often late arriving home. But this isn't really a story about me being greedy, although I was. This is actually a story about people being able to spend quality time with their families. So I'm really pleased. I was up in the northeast over half term, and I was driving through the A1 Coalhouse to Metro Centre scheme. And it's 50 miles an hour, so it's slow, but it works. And it's making a huge difference for people, allowing them to spend more time with their families. So for me, that's the why. That's what we're here doing. It's about delivering better outcomes for the society in which we work. So as a final slide, I just want to talk about those are the schemes, but what's it felt like for the supply chain? So I've set here a new focus, and Jim touched very quickly on the imperatives: health and safety, customer service, and delivery. I flagged these up because every single conversation I have with members about working with Highways England returns to these 3 points. There is a new focus on what's important. This is what we know we have to deliver, and we want to work with Highways England to achieve it. So that brings me on to a new partnership. I'm seeing much more collaborative working both with Highways England, but also between my members, people who are competitors, saying, what can we do to deliver on those imperatives? How can we work together to ensure that we get better outcomes in the future than we've seen now? And finally, on that point, I should say, I'll be running out of here quite quickly at the end because we're presenting our highway supplier guide, which is an example of exactly that. We recognize that the supply chain is one of the big challenges to be able to deliver. So our members have worked together to try and identify what we can provide in terms of guidance to the supply chain. So just as a little ad, Burgess Salmon Theatre immediately after this. Please do come along because I don't want to speak to an empty room. Finally, I talk about a new opportunity. I think Jim talked about the fact that this RIS 1 has been a learning process, but I think we've done that learning now. The edges have been knocked off. It's not anymore a cobbled together plan that will try and make it work. There's a real opportunity in RIS 2 to leverage all of the benefits of being able to work together to deliver some outstanding results. And that's not outstanding results in terms of projects. It's outstanding results in terms of the way that we influence the life in the communities that the Highways Agency networks, Highways England network serves. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today.